the storytelling is really about the experience that they had there. It's not really about the amenities or the location or anything like that there. So like if you really want to juice up your direct bookings, continue to serve your guests the best way possible. And with time, you start to nurture those people, you collect their emails, they're going to want to come back to you.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Hideaways Show. I'm joined today by an individual who is crushing it in the direct booking space for STRs, partly because he and his company, Crafted Stays, are building these sites. I'm joined today by Gil Chan. Gil, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to put this together. We had a few reschedules just due to the holidays and me having a kid. You know, those kids are always changing plans. But I'm glad we were able to hop on.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a good start of the year. I would say like now, like we had like 1 week because this year where kids were at home and it's actually nice to be in the office and a little bit of quietness, which is actually pretty nice.
Oh, people
I love the
don't.
kids, but it's still nice to get some work done.
Good disclaimer that you have to throw that disclaimer in there because I always say that and it's like I'll be like I love my kids to death, but I really love when daycare or school starts back up again because then it's a calm, quiet house where I can actually be productive and get work done and also have effective podcasts such as this. Because could you imagine a 3-month-old screaming or a 4-year-old running into the room and being like, Dad, I got a question. So it is good, but holidays were great. Family was good. It was very much one of those things that I was like 2025 can't come soon enough because we are ready to hit the ground running.
Yep, 100%.
So, but cool. Well, let's enough about 2025 because I'm sure tons of people are talking about 2025 goals and aspirations. What's your New Year's resolution type thing? Which resolution's another story for another day. But Gil, why don't for the listeners today, would love to introduce yourself, what you do within the STR space, and a little bit more about your company as well, Crafted Stays.
Yeah. So I'm a host myself first. I've been hosting for 3, 4 years now. We started right in kind of the earliest parts of the pandemic there. We were doing long-term rentals for a long while, and we wanted to get into short-term rentals. So we bought in the Smokies in our first one, and then the following year we bought two more cabins, another one in the Smokies, and then in Branson. And kind of somewhere along that journey, we decided to get into direct bookings. Myself and probably a lot of other listeners here can empathize this, but we start to get a lot of anxiety when almost all your revenues are coming from Airbnb. And especially in the very early days, we were barely on VRBO. We were on there, but we weren't getting any traction there. And pretty much like 99% of our revenues were coming from one source. And if you're on the forums, you hear the stories about folks getting kicked off for a week or banned altogether. And that just left me with a lot of anxiety. I felt like I didn't have control over my business. So I ended up wanting to go into direct bookings. I researched how folks got into direct bookings and how to build your site. And all of the big agencies were using WordPress. I was like, okay, if all the big agencies are using WordPress, I'm going to go build my site off WordPress. And oh my God, that was a huge mistake. It took me 4 weeks to launch my site. And it wasn't even the way I wanted to get to. It looked really nice, and I think a lot of my peers at the very end of it asked me to build out their sites. I'm like, no way in hell I'm ever going to do that ever again. Sorry, I don't know if this is an explicit channel or not, but
You're good. You're good. We very much are.
But my day job was in tech. I've been a product manager or product director for the last 15 years, and more recently, in the last 4 or 5 years, I was in e-commerce. And one of my biggest partners was Shopify. And I realized that in the e-commerce industry, if you wanted to get into e-commerce, you can start a Shopify store right away and start adding your products, building out your storefront, and really building a well-performing e-commerce site. But in our space, you would have to hire an agency for thousands of dollars for them to build out your site or use the PMS cookie cutter sites. And they can only go so far. So I was like, okay, there's got to be a better way. And I searched and couldn't find anything. And I was like, okay, let me try to play around with it. So I coded the first version, shopped around with some of my peers, and people loved it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go head on. And I left my W-2 job in tech and went all in and ended up hiring an engineering team to help me take on all the engineering development side of it. I continue to do design and product. And then more recently, I've been focusing on really building up our brand, really going to market basically. So we've been building companies ever since, and it's been really good. We originally started off really helping smaller hosts But more recently, we've been getting hosts with much larger portfolios, a lot of boutique hotels coming to us, things of that sort, where we're spending a lot more time with individual folks, in addition to building the self service platform as well too.
Yeah. It's what I think is awesome about your story is you did like step 1 through 3 of what every host typically does. It's like, okay, well, I need to get my direct booking site, right? And you researched it and it's WordPress and you build the WordPress site, quickly realized you're like, why did I go down this path of trying to do it myself? I can totally relate with the WordPress site. I tried to do it for our first property. Probably took me 6 or 7 weeks, partly because I'm a perfectionist and I couldn't get it off the ground because I'm like, it's not right yet. It's not right yet. It's not right yet. And then I get it up. What happens? Wasn't driving any traffic to it. No direct bookings. Maybe got 1 or 2, which was nice. But what I think you did that most people probably aren't capable of doing was like, well, I wasn't happy with the WordPress site. Let me just go build this thing myself. Let me just go start a company around direct bookings. And I love that story. And I'm very much excited to see where Crafted Stays goes from here. I think you and I actually, I'm trying to think back when you and I met, would have been right before STR Wealth Conference. Was it 2024? Was that when it
Yeah,
was?
yeah,
It
yeah.
was
Almost
February.
just about a year ago,
Yeah.
like 1 month shy of a year ago, almost.
Yeah. And I think I recall you were working to talk to PMS providers and integrating
It's
with them, which it's, I think from that point to where you are now, like, would you say leaps and bounds from where you were in February to now?
Yeah, I think in that show, we had actually did our first partnership with OwnerRez, and that's where I met them in person at WealthCon. And since then, now we're integrated into we're OwnerRez, Hospitable, Hostaway, Guesty. We're actually we just announced our Guesty partnership, and then there's another one coming right up too in the next 60 days or so, probably 30 days.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's I'm excited for you. Being able to connect with all those PMSs is I think obviously you realize very critical for building these direct booking platforms. And um, so
yeah,
with Crafted Stays, just so listeners understand, I understand what Crafted Stays offers. So for what you guys are offering, you looked at and said, okay, the industry is is providing this service, but it's at a top tier price. It's at a price that a lot of hosts are gonna like, their eyes are just gonna blow up when they see it. If I understood correctly, and I recall from our past conversations, it was very much you saw an opportunity in the market to be like, okay, well, let me. I don't even want to call it I don't know if affordable is the right term, but a price that hosts would feel comfortable getting in on and being
yeah.
able to feel confident that great, like I can get a direct booking site for what I want at a price that I'm not going to have to drop 4, 5, 6, $7,000 to build this website.
And yeah, that's right. When I got into it, I had the choice of either paying one of the agencies, I think it was $6,000, and I had a portfolio of 2 or 3 at that point. I did not have well, I did have the cash flow, but I didn't want to invest it all in one place. And that's kind of why I went down the path of creating my own. And I'm pretty tech savvy. I've built websites in the past. Um, Doing the API integration and actually making the site like really well performing, that was the harder part. Um, but on our platform, you can connect into any of the PMSs that we support. It pulls in all your property information. It keeps it all in sync, all your availability, all your rates, allows people to search across your entire portfolio, and allows you to choose from different templates. So you can actually get a site set up in 15 minutes, which is amazing. Like, and you have a really well performing site. And the thing I love is that we're building a platform that many, many, many hosts use. So rather than a WordPress site where you have an agency that builds it for you once and says, here you go, we're actually continually optimizing these sites. So we do a lot of tests with some of our larger hosts where they drive significant volumes there. And we'll play with how navigation is, how the mobile experience is, and we'll just change things around and we'll run little small tests. And if the tests perform really well, then we'll start to roll that same change out to everybody. So anyone that's using that template will start to see like those improvements on their own direct booking sites. So
Nice.
it allows us to invest across the board among many, many hosts. So I think that's like one of the things that I really love about building it the way that we're building it.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you mentioned like the mobile layout. Do you see for guests that are booking through these direct booking sites, is mobile critical? I mean, I people are always booking for mobile. Do you guys put more of an emphasis on, obviously you want the desktop version to also function properly, look ideal. But do you put a bigger emphasis, or I guess more focus, on building a very robust, stylish mobile,
Yeah,
site?
we do spend a significant amount of effort in building out the mobile version. So even before we do any development, we actually design both the desktop, tablet, and mobile. We actually do three versions of the site. And we spend a significant amount of effort of like figuring out what changes should we make, how should the navigation be different on mobile and desktop. It's not just the screen resolution difference, it's the way that you navigate. You're not using a mouse, you're using gestures and swipes. So we want to make sure that we accommodate for some of those changes as well too. And when we looked at our stats, it was like 46% of traffic is coming from mobile. That's almost half the amount of traffic. So we almost have to spend a significant amount of effort, almost equal amount of effort of designing and making the desktop well performant as we do on mobile. I think we found that typically people still book primarily on desktop, but they'll view your site on mobile as well too. So we have like unique sharing options where you can text it to yourself, you can email it to yourself. So if you found a listing, you want to send it to your desktop, you can do that as well too. So we do like some of those small little things that people typically don't get into the weeds of, but since we have a massive amount of users using it, it's worth our effort to invest a little bit of time to continually tweak and optimize for mobile.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all that you guys are focused on. I should say mobile first, but it's a very big priority with that 46%. It's huge, and if you can't get mobile right, I think the direct booking site itself could suffer. But you are a very well versed individual in the tech space, I will say. So I was very confident that you had that covered. So
Yeah, and I would say like mobile is probably the more challenging one. And if
yeah,
anything, we do spend more time on the mobile side. I don't know if folks know this, but when Google crawls your site, they're usually crawling the mobile version of your site first rather than the desktop version. It wasn't the case way back when. So that means that when we're optimizing for load times, we have to optimize for mobile first in terms of load times. And we learned that somewhat the hard way when we first launched just a little over a year ago. We were downloading these like really high res images from the PMS, and then we were loading them on both the mobile and desktop versions of it. And so it looked really good on mobile, but it took quite a bit of time for those pages to load that high res images. And so now we made it where when we download the images or when someone uploads a new image, we actually we convert that image into four different sizes there. So if you're visiting on a mobile, then we'll only serve the mobile version of that image. And honestly, you can't tell the difference because your screen is only so big. But it loads probably 3 times faster than it did before. So we make like small little improvements there to really in that specific area, it's both on the user experience, but also to juice up SEO.
yep, yeah, absolutely. And with that change, I don't know if you guys track this or if your clients track this, but did you see a bump in, I guess, people, maybe not visiting the site, but converting or staying on the site longer?
Yeah, and there's a couple. Like we have our analytics, and so we looked at our analytics. We looked at how we're performing when Google sends bots to your page and see how we're performing there. The user experience we're experiencing ourselves, and we did notice a bump in a significant bump actually on the conversion on mobile, and also desktop too. And I probably attribute the desktop bump really to people that may see the site first on mobile and then book finally on desktop.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Where it's like someone comes across the site, sees it on the phone, they're like, "Okay, great, I'll check that out when I get home." Or I'm very much the type. If my wife is listening to this, sorry, honey, I'm gonna bash you here for a second. I love you to death, but she can do so much on her mobile device, whether it be designing something in Canva or designing a Christmas card for a family member. She is incredible at that. And I'm always like, well, why don't you just go to the desktop version? Like, I get it while you're out and about on the phone is definitely nice. Well, why don't you just go to the desktop version? Why don't you grab your laptop and then you can see it better? And she just, I don't know, her mind thinks differently than mine, and it's very much the case where, again, it's that mobile focus first, but also the crazies out there like myself who like to look at it from a desktop perspective. You got to show them a little bit of love too, right?
Yeah, yeah. So we pay attention to both sides of it.
Yeah,
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 definitely.
which is smart.
Yep.
So, but so from let's talk shift gears just a little bit away from crafted stays and more generic, I'll say, for direct bookings. You saw the value that, or you saw an opportunity where you needed a direct booking site and then also found out that other hosts in the industry also need a direct booking site. And I think that's all fine and dandy, but then it's okay, driving traffic to that direct booking site or just the power of direct bookings when you do it the right way. Can you talk a little bit about direct booking themselves and the power of being able to build a site that showcases your properties that allows potential guests to convert into guests that are actually booking stays directly as opposed to Airbnb or VRBO?
Yeah, yeah. And there's lots of parts to it. I think a lot of folks that get into direct bookings don't really understand, like, oh, maybe I'll just build a website and I'll get people to come. And that's not really the case. It's something that you have to nurture. And I think the expectation that I try to set is that you want to nurture this over a 2 or 3 year time frame. And the goal there is over 2 or 3 years, you want to get to that 40, 50, 60, sometimes even 80% direct bookings. But it's not something that is super passive that you can just kind of set and forget it, build out your website and just like leave it on there and expect it to go on its own. There are some things that you can do very early on, like really making sure that your website's SEO optimized. You can create additional pages to drive traffic in there, especially if you're in a smaller area, smaller town. Those small little improvements very early on, you can ride that for a long while there. But there are other tactics that take constant nurturing there, the more active forms there. And I think maybe taking a step back, there's not one single way to really win in direct bookings, especially on the marketing side of things. And it really depends on the type of stay that you have. If you have something that's a little bit more unique, it has certain amenities, certain look of it, kind of like your places, like those do really well on social. Word of mouth goes really well. It's very shareable. It's very story like driven. So like if you can really nail social media, you can really drive significant amount of direct bookings in a very short time frame. Now, if you have something that's a little bit more typical short-term rental, vacation rental market, maybe you have a cabin in the mountains, it's a normal single family home or a cabin itself. Those are going to be a little bit harder where it's going to take you time to build up that list and for you to nurture that through email. So different types of properties have different tactics there, and even the host I found that has different tactics as well too. I've met some phenomenal hosts that have cabins on a lake, and there's nothing really special about the cabin itself, but the location is actually really nice. And they are they're fishers themselves, they're specifically anglers. And they found out which communities, which Facebook communities people are at, what competitions there might be. And just because they're so embedded in that area, they're able to market their properties really, really effectively. So there's not one size fit all. I think you do need to have a well performing site. You do need to drive traffic to it in some manner. I think the last thing is that you need to figure out how to nurture your folks because very likely you're going to not just talk to them once, you're going to be talking to them, nurturing them over a long period of time. And if you can build up that specifically email list, you're able to really capture direct bookings no matter what strategy you end up using.
Right. And you really need to establish trust
Yep.
with that person that visits your site because we've had this happen to us. We had it happen to us literally this morning. A guest messaged us and said, hey, I found your guys' site on Instagram. I want to make sure this isn't some scam, some, fake account. And I'm gonna give you my credit card information. Like, can you help confirm like you guys' site looks legit? But I just want to talk to someone to confirm that you guys are actually real. And we called them within under a minute and it's like, yes, it's we're legit. Just any questions you have, we can explain the property. Um,
Yeah.
but establishing that trust, if you can do that through these direct booking sites or even before then, I think you stand a better chance of versus those hosts that don't develop that trust. Where if a guest gets to your direct booking site and they're like, I don't know, like, is that real or is that a fake site? I think there's challenges there. So I assume when you guys are designing these sites, like, what do you guys do with your clients and your customers to ensure trust is incorporated into the design of the direct booking site?
Yeah, I probably should have a better way of enumerating this, but we do actually do quite a bit of the things. I think even like the templates themselves, we kind of not force, but we encourage folks to do certain things to build trust with the templates. So by default, on most of our templates, we have a section about us. It asks you to upload a picture of you as a host asks you to enter in your bio, and a lot of folks will copy what they have on Airbnb because they took the time to write that bio out there. We encourage folks to put their email address and their phone numbers on their website so it looks legitimate. Also, it helps on SEO as well too. You want to make sure that your site looks polished. The checkout is really like you're using standards, security standards as necessary for checkout. All of our sites are all encrypted by SSL. We all redirect to HTTPS. So we try to encourage like best practices on our sites there. So for hosts that sign up with us, they don't realize that we're trying to push them towards building trust. It's kind of like part of the onboarding process there. And we do that somewhat intentionally because not a lot of folks know exactly what it takes to build a well performing site. And we don't necessarily want them to learn, but we want them to be able to really build it out in the right way. So we have like little cues here and there. We ask people to enter in the reviews to establish trust as well too. So there's like all these little small little things that starts to mount up where when you look at the site, you're like, oh, actually, this looks really legitimate. And if I actually like look up this phone number or look up this address or go to Google My Business, I can find this place. Like those are things that are kind of like naturally part of the onboarding process.
Hey guys, real quick, the only way we can continue to grow this show to bring on bigger and better guests is if you guys rate, review, and share the show. So, if you could take 2 seconds and leave us a quick 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, it would mean the world to us. But even better than that, we'll be able to reach more real estate investors and help them build out their dreams through unique short-term rentals. Now back to the show.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Now, question for you with your sites. I've seen a lot of some providers do it, and some people mention this as a best practice. Do you guys include like the Superhost badge on the website or the VRBO? I don't even know what is it Premier Hosts or
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't. Do you
yeah.
guys have those badges on the site, or do you see much value from including those on the direct
We
booking site
do
itself?
we do have it depending on the portfolio type and the template. Well, there's one specific template that actually comes by default to have those badges to ask if you want to include those badges on there. What we don't do is redirect folks back to the Airbnb page because what we don't want them to do is then check out on platform. It kind of defeats the point there. So we don't encourage folks to redirect back to the Airbnb page, but we do ask them if you have a Superhost badge or the Premier, a VRBO Premier, do you want to include that in there?
Yeah, and do those badges? I've gotten the Superhost badge a handful of times now, and it's like I can never recall what it looks like because it's one of those where it's look at. It's like great, on to the next, right? It's is your name included on there? Because otherwise, I could assume anyone could just go Google Superhost badge, grab it on there, pop it on the website, and
That,
great.
that- and then I don't think those badges are like certified in any way where there's a seal with it with
Right.
your avatar picture on there. It's just a normal badge there.
Right, right. Yeah, because that's what I'm trying to get
Yeah.
to is the value in there. Is it wasted space on the website? And do you see with your clients like or guests that are booking directly, do you think guests give that weight? They're like, oh wow, they are a super host, they are a premier host on VRBO, or some people look at it and be like, I don't know what that means, or I don't care.
They probably care less about like the Superhost status side of it, but they do like knowing that you're on platform as well too.
Right,
So it adds validity to is this a real business more than anything else? Because nowadays almost everybody has a Superhost badge,
right.
unless you're a really bad host.
Yeah, which those hosts aren't listening to our show, so you're fine, right?
Yeah, I mean, every now and then you guys slip up, but then like after a while, if you've been hosting for a while, you have enough 4.9s to hold you for tough seasons even. But yeah, a lot of folks now have the Superhost badge where it's not like a real special thing anymore. But back to the point, it adds validity that this is a legitimate business.
Right, exactly. And I think the thing that carries more weight than even those badges, I think it's a piece of the puzzle to this puzzle of
That's right.
validity. The reviews, I think, is also it's kind of a 1-2 punch where people want to see what people are saying about the property and pulling those reviews from Verbo, from maybe you've already gotten other direct bookings or Airbnb to be like, okay, what does this stay actually like? It kind of proves that like, hey, here's our place and here's what people are saying about it. Now, granted, again, I'm trying to play devil's advocate here. Like someone could say, okay, great, well, you could generate those. But again, I think you're establishing this trust, and that about us section also, and all the other little components that you were talking about, you combine that together. my perspective, I think that forms that seal of trust with a potential guest to be like, okay, this person is legit. They didn't just throw together a couple reviews and point their address to a warehouse out in California or something.
Yeah, and it goes into like the bigger story that like you have a pretty big social following as well too. And you can look back at how long you've been posting, how many people have been engaging with your post. Your Instagram page links back to your direct booking site. And hopefully you're doing that pretty much everywhere where your Google My Business might be redirecting back folks into your website. And so you start to build this network where it's not just your website standing on its own, but you may have a Facebook page. And we actually encourage like the little badges on the very bottom of the page where someone can actually find you on Facebook, people can find you on Instagram. And when you link back and forth, people have this higher sense of like trust. Like this is not just some orphan website that's out there that's gonna collect my credit card information. Like it doesn't feel like that when you get to a legitimate site.
Right, exactly. So, one question I did want to ask you. So when you're building out these direct booking sites and you have these templates for different hosts, I assume you guys are focusing on for these property owners who have multiple properties coming in, designing a website that in a way speaks to the guest avatar they're trying to go after. Because if the template in a way seems more, I don't know what example I want to go with here, but like if I'm appealing towards couples and the website just screams like adventure, like or family getaway, and it's like, it's more so focused for couples. Do you guys try to build that website or craft that website like what I did there? Craft
Yeah.
that website to speak to the guest avatar of the properties or the hosts that
Yeah,
are providing those properties.
I think it kind of goes into like the overall brand of it. Like, what do you want to convey and how do you want to convey your brand through? And so the templates give you a sense of control over communicating your brand, what the look and feel might look like. Do you want something that's a bit more modern? Do you want something that's a little bit more warm? Do you want something that's a little bit more moody that kind of communicates that brand? But then the other side of it is really around your copy and the imagery that you use along with it too. So that's a really, really important part. And we've had lots of we on our podcast we've spoken to many folks in the industry about how to understand your ideal guest avatar, how to speak to them. But it really starts off with really understanding who's booking your place in the first place, who's staying there, what do they care about, what do they really like gravitate towards, and you want to literally leverage that very upfront and center. So that hero image, that tagline that they first see, that should be speaking directly to them. For my places, we're all family stays. Like all of my cabins and lodges are geared towards families and sometimes multi-generational families too. So some of the larger ones especially. And so the first thing that we talk about is really family friendly stays. And we also have a video reel that kind of plays in the background on that hero, and you'll see children in the background. You'll see kind of the Smoky Mountains. You'll see some of those in there that really draws them and makes them feel like, okay, this is actually the place I want to go to. So if someone that is looking for a bachelorette stay, they look at my website, they're gonna immediately know that's not for me. But also on the flip side, if a young family, specifically a mother, goes onto our website, it starts to resonate a lot more with them. So we know like who we're trying to like not necessarily push away, but who we're trying to really draw into our websites.
Right, because I think a lot of people, it's just, it's very cliche to say, but everyone's like, oh, well, if I don't want to exclude anyone from, trying to market our property to, and it's like, you don't realize you're actually doing a disservice to your property by trying to market to the masses versus, niching down and focusing on your ideal guest avatar and really leaning into that. And people just not understanding that when you do that, you're still going to get, if you're going after couples and you have a property that's big enough, you're still going to get the small families that come in. You're going to get the individual who's just in town for a work related trip or wants to go do a secluded hike or just wants to get away and be by themselves for a little bit. So I think niching down is very important. And if you can really speak to that on your site, I think it's critical, because then I guess is like, am I book? Is this a couples retreat? Is this a family place? Is this a 6-bedroom cabin, or is it a 2-bedroom secluded in the woods that's perfect for my wife or my girlfriend or my husband or my boyfriend type stay? So
Yeah, and the better that you can speak to it, the better they can highlight why the amenities are the way they are, what you have in there, the better that you can kind of really resonate. Like for even on our Airbnb pages, we include pictures of pack and plays and high chairs and those types of things. The kids like food bowls. Um, we include those in our listing photos, and we actually highlight it in also our direct booking sites because like we want the mothers that visit both our listing pages or our direct booking site to know like if you stay with us, we'll try to make it as stress free as possible for you because we know how challenging it is to travel with young ones. So like we try pretty hard to like really gear towards specifically who we're targeting there. And yes, you're right. We're totally gonna alienate people, and I'm actually very okay with that.
Right. Yeah. I think you have to at times. And I think the hosts that do that, you've seen them have a lot of success by doing so. So, yeah, I want to go back a little bit to a point you mentioned earlier of wanting to nurture a potential guest that comes to the site. How do you guys go about doing that? Do you guys have, like, when they land on the site? I know some websites where they're on the site for 10 seconds, a pop-up pops up, or if they scroll down, it says like, $100 off your next stay, enter email here. Do you guys do anything from like a capture email to help them with email marketing? Do you guys, how are you guys nurturing that relationship with a potential guest that comes to the site? And how, I mean, the most important piece of information that you want from that potential guest is their email.
Yeah, and so there's a few ways on the email front. I think one way to capture emails is really what guests that have stayed with you. So make sure that you can try to capture them. There's many ways to do it. You can use StayFi, you can use QR codes, whatever it is, but make sure that you're capturing emails from your past guests. The other place that you want to capture emails are people that visit your website, and we have many hosts and property managers that will embed pop-up forms that usually happens anywhere from like 7.5 seconds, 7 seconds all the way to 15 seconds after they visit the page, or if they go scroll down 50% past down the page to surface a pop-up. And usually there you'll want to give some care for them to leave their email. It can be something where you're offering them first news on any discounts, or it could be 5% off your next stay. It can be anything of those things. And if you actually like, I use this tactic quite often across all of our efforts. If you look at what they do on the e-commerce side, you can really try to figure out like what's some of the tactics that have worked really well for the last decade plus. Those will likely work in hospitality. So we found a lot of successes, and that also works on the toolkit that you use as well too. So your tech stack. So some of the hosts that we've seen that use like Klaviyo. Klaviyo is one of the best email platforms for e-commerce. And if you embed Klaviyo and you send emails through Klaviyo and you embed that onto your homepage, you're able to do retargeting back to those folks as well too. So you can do some pretty nifty things if you start to leverage some of the tools that are in an adjacent industry, e-commerce.
Yeah. So, and have you guys, I'm curious to know if you've had any hosts try this out or if you built any templates for some of your direct booking sites. I saw our property that we first owned. It was our first STR property. We sold, moved on, but the person that bought it kept the same brand, same name, same everything, which was great. They changed the logo a little bit, which is fun. But they just started offering merch. Have you seen a host offer merch with their place of someone who's has that? I think you need that established brand to offer merch versus if you're just offering merch. Like if someone's like, okay, I'm going to go there one time. I really don't care to buy the sweatshirt. Now, maybe people do enjoy that. But have you guys incorporated any templates that, I guess this concept of e-commerce, have a merch store essentially for the brand?
There's some hosts, it's not that common. It's more common in kind of like unique stays or where there's specific like a campground or kind of like your places where there's 3 or 4 different cabins that's under one big brand of umbrella. Those are the ones where merch I see more prevalent. And honestly, I don't have enough data points to know like, oh, are they driving enough traffic on their merch? And honestly, like a lot of those merches are print on demand and so on.
Right.
So it probably doesn't cost them anything more than having their Shopify store to help fulfill orders. But yeah, you can build one out. I would say like if you have one cabin like that's pretty general vacation home, probably not worth it. But if you have a unique stay, something to talk about, people love telling stories and sharing stuff. That I think those are the types that really can leverage merchandise and really their brand more effectively.
Right. And I've been wanting to provide merch for our brand eventually, just because I think again, you said it perfectly, where unique and experiential stays, I think, have that advantage of, it's a great talking point. If someone's like, oh, someone's wearing the Hideaway sweatshirt. Like, oh, what are the Hideaways? Like, oh my gosh, I stayed at this amazing A-frame out in Kentucky. You have to go check it out. Or they have all these properties. It's like you have these boots on the ground individuals who are advocating your brand to the masses. They're like, oh, like I'll go check them out. Go check them out on Instagram. Go check them out on TikTok. Surprisingly, TikTok has taken off for us. I don't know how, but it has. And I think that's where one day I would love to offer merch and provide that to our guests, because I think it's a very again, it leans into this concept of we're providing unique stays. It's a unique property. It's a unique experience. And also what's unique about that is you get to buy a sweatshirt with our brand on it, or maybe we offer free coffee mugs that have our logo there. So I think I always am looking for different ways and different revenue streams to offer that up to guests, but also as a way of, I would say, cheap advertising of someone having their brand planted on their
Yeah.
chest walking around. So
Yeah. Well, we do uh I'm a big fan of Sticker Mule. I don't know if you've
yeah,
heard of them or used them. And I'm subscribed to their like mailing list. So every like couple of days, they'll say like, we have a promotion on buttons or stickers or whatever. And every so often, I'll order a new set of coasters. And so I actually have paper coasters, kind of like the beer coasters that you'll find
yep,
in a bar.
yep,
So I'll have those. They're branded our cabin, and we have them all throughout the cabin.
yeah,
It protects our coffee tables, but if they walk away, it's free advertisement for me. Like
right,
I'll gladly replace them, and they're not that expensive. They're probably like 50 cents a pop, if anything.
right, yeah,
So if someone takes it and wants to keep it for themselves, they can scan that QR code the next time they want to stay at home. It's perfect advertising for me. So like I'm a big fan of like free swag that you can put your logo on, and really
yep,
like when someone visits your place, they have that feeling that this is not just an Airbnb, that it's a brand of its own. Like I would encourage branding throughout your property as
yep.
much as possip
I didn't know if when you were talking to those stickers, I was like, is Gil going out here buying like hundreds of stickers for crafted stays, and everywhere he goes, he's just like putting stickers here, sticker here. You need a sticker. You need a sticker. I'm like, hey, it gets the word out there, but I'm only kidding. But it's very true. It's such a simple thing for me. Anywhere we go, my wife, I think she always rolls her eyes at it, but like, oh my gosh, we got to get a sticker for the place that we went. Like, so if we travel to Yosemite or we travel to a cabin, like to me, I would geek out over it. Like I went to a cabin, they're like, oh, by the way, here's a free sticker
Yep.
that you get to bring home. Like I'm always putting it on a cooler. I don't put it on my laptop, just got a new one, so I don't want to litter it with stickers. But I love them because it's a good conversation starter. Someone brings up like, oh, what's crafted stays? Like, oh my gosh, let me tell you about it. Or what's the Hideaways? Like, oh my goodness, best cabin I've stayed at. Let me tell you more about it. It's a talking point, and like you said, a cheap form of advertising that gets people talking, which is, and then again, drive them to your direct booking site. Don't
Yeah.
drive them to Airbnb like a lot of people do. Do not drive them there, which again, it's fine if you're driving traffic there, but it's better off for your business long term. Drive them direct where you have control and can keep them in your ecosystem where you have more control.
Yeah. And you mentioned something very interesting where really, just like on the OTAs, it's really, really important for you to have a really stellar experience. I find that the hosts that do the best in direct bookings are the hosts that really care about their guest stays. And we're not just talking about, oh, they have 496 or 498 in on Airbnb, but like they really care, and they really follow up with guests. They make sure that when guest stays there, it feels really good. I know some hosts that are on site and they get a chance to meet them, and those folks do phenomenally well. And their places aren't like unique stays, or like the storytelling is really about the experience that they had there. It's not really about the amenities or the location or anything like that there. So like if you really want to juice up your direct bookings, continue to serve your guests the best way possible. And with time, you start to nurture those people, you collect their emails, they're going to want to come back to you. I have a lot of guests that we email, and they're like, "Do you have a place in Florida? Do you have a place in this place?" And I'm like, I wish I did. I wish could host you again. I don't have one there." But they love staying with us. And so like I would really start there before anything else.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things where you may not see instant gratification from that, except with exception to the review that comes back that we've received multiple times that I'm sure other hosts have too, that they love is, oh my gosh, you guys have thought of everything. Everything was, taken into consideration. It was one of the best experiences our family's ever had. We've had a couple people say, nicest Airbnb I've ever stayed at.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that they finish it with, can't wait to come back. Once you have that, that's where you start to actually have a legit business, because once you have these people mentioning they want to come back and you have their email and they are within your ecosystem, then you can keep them coming back versus you run the risk on Airbnb of if a guest says 5-star stay, can't wait to come back.
They're not going to come back.
More than likely that guest in a month's going to forget that they stayed with you, even though they had a great time. And they're like, where was that place we stayed in Kentucky? I don't know. Let's just go find another one this time versus they're, oh, I didn't realize I needed to go to Kentucky, but now I do because I remembered I stayed with the Hideaways and I enjoyed my experience at this cabin. Let me go try this other cabin that they have. You keep them within the ecosystem and you just stack that. One recurring guest turns into 2, turns into 4, turns into 8, turns into 16. This thing starts to compound as, you have 16 recurring guests. You have all the other new guests that continue to pop in. Again, if you take those new guests, convert them into recurring, that recurring pool starts to grow. And now you're starting to have a long-term sustainable business that is not dependent on Airbnb, VRBO, or Booking.com.
Yeah, I think that's the difference between posting your property on the OTAs and building a direct booking engine. When you're on the OTAs, it's really about the next transaction. Did I get a booking? When did I get that booking? When like can I reduce the price to get that next booking? That's really what it's about. You're really constantly chasing over really getting the next booking there. It's very what I call transactional. And if you think about your direct booking site, it's almost the opposite. Outside of advertising, you can buy ads down to drive traffic there. But with direct bookings, you're really building a very long-term plan towards booking. You're almost building a funnel where you're trying to drive people into that funnel. You're trying to make sure it's as leak-proof as possible. You're trying to add more people to the top of it. So with every stay, I would think about like anytime you get an Airbnb guest there, try to convert them into someone that you can own, that you can really talk to over and over again. So with the first year, the second year, the third year, you're really growing up that email list. You now have a social media following that you built up. You have social proof with all your reviews. You start to think about like your business as a sustainable business. I think that's the biggest difference between posting your property on the OTAs versus building a direct booking.
Right. And I don't think for people who are maybe just starting out, they have their first, maybe even their second property, building this sustainable business and building these processes to capture email, nurture guests doesn't need to be complicated. And you don't need to go out and break the bank to spend a ton of money on software if you don't want to. It can be as simple as guest comes and stays with an Airbnb reservation I can't remember with Verbo if you get their phone number, but at least with Airbnb, you get their phone number, right?
Yeah.
And through, I know our platform, through HostAway, there's the SMS feature. We can send them a message directly from HostAway via text to that guest. And what we'll do for some of the properties that maybe we don't have, a QR code or StayFi at that property, it's like, hey, we really hope you had a great time. If you ever want to, come back, we offer returning guests a 10% discount. Would you like to sign, join our newsletter or join that list? And 99.9% of the time we get that person says, sure, would love to be added to the list. They drop their email. Now you have that person's email and then you collect that and you start to just send, even if it's just monthly emails about what's going on in the area, about your property, any discounts you have, any holidays that are coming up, like get first dibs on a booking for Christmas before it fills up type of thing. Now you are starting to capture that list, but it doesn't need to be hundreds of dollars per month to be able to build these systems. Start small and scale up from there. And one thing that I want to a tip to the audience that I think that bit me in the butt initially with our first property was the term email marketing scared the life out of me for whatever reason, because it seems like this big daunting like email marketing campaigns. And if you're not in marketing, like what does that mean? What does that entail? Like that requires MailChimp for that. I'm just using that because that's the first one that came to mind, but it requires MailChimp and I need to integrate this into my system. How am I going to ever do this? It's like, no, it could be as simple as you sending a text through your PMS system to capture an email that goes into a Google Doc that then you extract, you copy into an email and you manually send that email. Is that sustainable long term? Probably not. But is it a place to start? Absolutely. And the biggest thing is to take that action and start collecting those emails so you can start establishing that business and then funnel that traffic to your direct booking to stack those recurring guests over and over again.
Yeah, I think what you just last said about really making sure that you can collect those emails in the first place, that's really, really important. What you do with it and how you do with it afterwards, like you can't go back and say, if you haven't been collecting, you can't go back the last 3 years and reach out to those past guests. But if you've been collecting them, you can email them at some future point and you'll want to reestablish that trust back with them because if they haven't heard from you in the last 2 3 years, you may have to remind them, thank you for your stay at blank, and kind of remind them that like, hey, I'm not just some weirdo emailing you that got your email through some list on the internet. I'm a legitimate person that hosted you a couple years back. So you want to kind of like really like reacquaint them with you if you've been collecting their emails for a long time. But honestly, a lot of those emails tools you mentioned, Mailchimp, I favor Klaviyo, any of those, they're actually not that hard to use. I actually prefer using them over sending emails through my personal email address,
Yep.
mainly because I want folks to feel like they also have control of opting out. So when I send out emails, I want to make sure that I'm abiding by any anti-spam rules. I'm being responsible with them. Then obviously, if you email someone manually using your Gmail, if someone says, "I don't want to hear from you, take me off your list," even if you're doing it manually, just please take them off your list.
Right.
Respect them on that. And again, like you said, it doesn't scale at some point. But if you spend maybe an afternoon or so, you can actually have a pretty robust system in any of the email service provider platforms. And the good thing about that is what we do is we actually have set up a 12-month nurture campaign. So anyone that enters our mailing list, either through StayFi or QR code, they get added to our mailing list. And automatically, every month for the next 12 months, we nurture that person. And we ask them at month number 9, the ninth email, it was great hosting you almost a year ago. If you would like to stay with us again, here's a coupon code. And every email prior to that, it was really just about providing value. So we try not to spam people. We try to provide value. We talk about all the great things to do in our area, so that when they're deciding to stay, they're not thinking about like, oh, this is a place that sent me a bunch of spam emails. No, like they're actually sending valuable content. Like, oh, it's almost coming up to a year from our last day. Let's think about going again.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing is if you can provide value, then you're going to keep them consuming your emails, consuming any, maybe if you have a text campaign, whatever it may be, like it's consuming that content. So then you're top of mind. Whether
Yep.
they don't take action in the first 9 emails is, irrelevant. It's they knew all along they were going to book for their year stay. You've nurtured that relationship, so they're not going to forget about you in 9 months. You're top of mind once a month. They remember they're going to get an email from the Hideaways or whatever brand of they stayed at, whatever property they stay at, they're going to get that email, whether they do anything with it or not. But if you provide that value and it's not something that goes to junk or there's like, oh my gosh, yet again, here's another email from the Hideaways, delete. Like that's where the relationship starts to fall off. And you're going to have that with some people. Some people are just like, they're not interested in the emails,
Yep.
even though they provide it. And you're going to get people that unsubscribe, which is fine. That's just natural with any business. But just like you said, nurturing that relationship is so important, and it doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be valuable.
Yeah, and there's plenty of templates. You can even use ChatGPT and say you can give it a
I was
prompt.
going to say AI all day long.
Yeah, and it's not that hard. Like you can put a prompt there that says, "I'm creating a email campaign that has 12 emails in sequence. I'm planning to send this out to past guests every month, and I want to talk about the best things to do in this area." And it'll give you month by month what you should be sending out. And the things that you have on there are not time based. So you want to make sure you remember that because like you don't want to talk about like snow trips or whatever because it's based on when they last stayed there. So this 12-month sequence campaign is based on when they last checked out with you. So you don't want to put anything in there that is holiday driven, seasonal driven. Um, and then you can then add on top of that your what we call your broadcast emails. So if you have open availabilities, if you have events that are coming up, those are things that you may want to send out an additional email that out to. But those email sequences that you have on automatic, you can really automate that with some help with AI.
Absolutely. Yeah, AI is one of those things. I will say I have just haven't spent the time in really understanding the capabilities of AI, but I do know it's one of those things where if you don't get on board, it's going to be one of those things in a year or so or 2 years, whatever the time frame may be. You're going to look back and be like, kicking yourself for not taking advantage of it. I think it's going to continue to progress day by day, week by week, month by month. Like we've seen that from even when ChatGPT was initially launched to now, what is being utilized across the AI industry. It's a massive opportunity. I think it's a once in a lifetime opportunity where these different platforms are going to continue to integrate AI components into their software because
Yep.
they have to. They have to keep pace with what everyone else is doing. So I love going down the AI tangent, even though I don't personally know the most about AI, but it's one of those things where it's just keep pace, keep it top of mind, and realize that AI can save you so much time. I think it's going to be critical moving forward for
Yeah.
hospitality and STR hosts.
Yeah, I think you'll see AI, like you mentioned, being embedded into a lot of our operations there. That will streamline messaging and a lot of those things. I think with content generation there, AI is really helping you kind of like break through kind of like that mental writer's block, if anything else. Like, so if you are stuck on doing something, it's always helpful to think of AI as your friend that you're talking to and trying to get your message across, and you're trying to break through that noise there. And I think that that's the easiest way to approach AI for a lot of folks there. And again, like you can definitely use, and like a lot of the PMSs actually have AI built in there, so you'll see that around. But I think it's for anyone that's in entrepreneurship, we're always learning new things. We're learning how to do something that we haven't done before, and AI is a great place to just have a sounding board there. It's the most non-judgmental sounding board you can have.
Right. It's almost like that friend who has an answer for everything or knows someone for everything. Like that's who AI is to you. The person that knows I shouldn't say knows everything. Knows the majority of things and is accurate, is right most of the time.
Yeah, you still have to fact check. Yeah, just like your
Correct.
friends, you take their advice with a grain of salt as well.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. So so one of the last questions I was going to ask you, Gil, was around what you guys had planned for 2025. So I have to ask, Crafted Stays heading into 2025. I'm sure you have goals, aspirations for what you want to do with that business. First question, what are the plans for Crafted Stays in 2025? And two, is AI a piece of that component? Are you guys doing with anything with AI for these direct booking templates or these direct booking sites for your
Yeah,
clients?
yeah, yeah. So I think for this year, we'll add a few more PMS integrations, maybe one or two more. We have pretty good coverage across the top PMSs, and we don't want to like not oversaturate, but we don't want to like spread ourselves too thin. We have pretty deep integrations with our PMSs. We invest a lot of time into making sure that those integrations are really tightly woven. We are building out a few new tools to help folks drive more traffic to their direct booking site. So we're spending a lot more efforts on SEO. We'll be releasing out our blog before the first half of the year so that folks can write their own blogs on our platform.
Oh, nice.
And that's where we'll start to really incorporate AI back into our platform. So kind of going back to content generation there, AI is one of those tools that work really, really effectively when you're creating new content there. And we have to also do it mindfully where we're not just having a bot write all of our content. That's not the
Right.
purpose of it there, but it's really helping folks get through that writer's block there. So you'll see AI incorporate there. For us at Craft Stays, we are a Google for startups partner. So Google invests a lot of infrastructure into us. They do a lot of training for us. They really support us in the growth of our business. And one of the things that they've been trying to engage with us on is really how to incorporate AI back into our business. And so far, we haven't engaged with them all that much. But later on into the year, after we release our blog, we'll start to really partner up with Google to figure out like how do we bring AI into our business. What we don't want to do is just put AI wherever we want. That's not the point. We're trying to figure out like what problems do we really want to solve and start there. And that's where we add the most value.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's smart because if you're just slapping AI to say, look, we've incorporated AI. Like there's a little bit of value to that, but the biggest thing is it has to solve problems and provide value to the the host as well as the guests who are accessing those sites.
Yeah. So like if we can tell you using AI, for instance, where your guests are coming from, how long they've been in your sites, what pages are they visiting, things of that sort. If we can help kind of get through some of those noise, that's where we might play with AI a little bit with content generation. We already incorporate chatbots with
Nice.
a lot of our hosts. So you can embed your own chatbots in there. So we and some of them are AI driven as well too. So we've seen a lot of our hosts already bring in some of those components in there, even though we didn't actually do a partnership with them at all. But it kind of works out of the box with our platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited for you guys in 2025. I know for us at the Hideaways and what we're doing, I feel like 2025 has been a lot more successful early on for us. I know we're only what 7 days in, but things are really moving along nicely. Conversations are being had, opportunities are being taken advantage of. Like it's 2025 is off to a hot start. So I really hope for you and Crafted Stage, you guys see the same and just continue to grow and integrate with more PMS solutions. And I'm excited to see where you guys end up.
Yeah, I think for me, a big one this year is really to help more hosts get into direct bookings as early as possible, but also really mature our platform along with some more established hosts as well too. And we saw a lot of that the end of last year. We're bringing on larger hosts and boutique hotels, and I think for this year we're probably going to be doubling down on that. Because I think that's where we have a lot of opportunity there. Because with some of the things that we're doing with the whole integrated experience there, we're able to tell you where your traffic is coming from. Is it coming from your social? Is it coming from your email marketing campaigns? So if you're spending marketing dollars behind it, you know which one your campaigns are most effective and tying that back to conversion. That's one of the biggest pain points that I've seen so far is that when you have disparate sites, or if you don't have analytics tightly coupled in there, it's really hard to know what marketing efforts are really driving the most amount of impact. And I see this a lot more with boutique hotels and really large property managers because they're spending massive amount of energy towards growing their social. They're spending massive amount of energy towards running ad campaigns. And those are the folks that benefit a lot from those analytics.
Yep. Yeah. I think the biggest thing is really, it's really understanding where your traffic is coming from. Because if you don't, I think feel like at that point it's very blind. You're just like, well, I mean, you could continue down the path of, well, don't, it's not broke, don't fix it type of thing. Like let's continue doing what we're doing. But at some point in time, knowledge is value to where then you can start to optimize for where that traffic is coming in to be able to put more energy into where the majority of your traffic is coming from, or to review other locations and be like, okay, could we spend more time here, or is the ROI just not worth it to where we need to double down on where the majority of the traffic's coming from?
Yeah, if I can tell you out of the 5 influencers that you worked with last year, which one's driving the most amount of conversions, like that's very valuable for you. So that next time
Very
you're
much
looking
so.
for your next influencer, you know exactly the type of profile you're looking for.
Yep. Yeah, it's so crucial, especially for experiential and unique stays where influencers are a key component. It's it's a question that's asked all the time of how much, what have you done for other hosts? What direct bookings have you brought in? And a lot of them, unfortunately, influencers, they don't have that information, nor do the hosts. So they've just indicated, well, we've increased following by X% or so many thousand followers, which is fine. But what we're starting to see within that industry now is followers doesn't necessarily equate to a
Yep.
full count of direct bookings. It's the attention and the awareness through those hundreds of thousands of followers and thousands of millions of views. But if you can't get them to convert, then you just are stuck there with an account that has tons of followers. That's cool to show off to your friends and family, but it's not converting into direct bookings.
Yep. Yep.
So, but well, perfect. Well, Gil, I do have two final questions for you. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I had direct bookings, anything around that area is I really enjoy that conversation, especially since we've started to see a huge amount of success with our properties with direct booking. So I really have appreciated this conversation. But the last two questions, I would say are unrelated to direct bookings, but you have an opportunity here to maybe sway them towards direct bookings if you want to. So the first question that we ask all guests on the show, and I really am always fingers crossed on this first one. What is your favorite book that has impacted your life or career? With the assumption that you yourself read books.
I do read a lot.
Awesome.
I do read a lot. Right now, I'm reading The Answer. The two books that I think about, actually, you asked for one. Can I cheat with two?
You can cheat with 2. It's more than fine.
Yeah,
I'll allow an exception this time.
I would say the most impactful book was me reading Rich Dad Poor Dad about 7 years ago. That's when I started getting into all things real estate.
Yep.
That's when I started, like, that led me to binge like hundreds of episodes of The Breaker Pockets. That was like one of the big pivotal ones. And then I think prior to that, one of the books that I really empathize with is Start With Why. Really understanding why you're doing the things that you're doing. And that has led me to really leave my W-2 job and start my own company, because for me, it wasn't about money. I didn't start the company because I wanted to be rich and famous. I wanted to be able to build something on my own, be proud of myself, and like really understanding why you're doing the things you're doing really helps give me a lot of motivation to really push forward, especially when times are hard.
Yeah, I think you will see hosts that are out there that don't. It's not money first. It's they have a legitimate why behind what they're doing. I think you see those people that are rising to the top and succeeding. So, Rich Dad Poor Dad, I agree. A very pivotal book for myself. It was one of the first books that really like opened my eyes of like I didn't realize this world existed. And then very similar path as you. I couldn't consume enough Bigger Pockets. I couldn't consume enough content on real estate investing. And I didn't know at the time I wanted to go into short-term rentals, but I was just like, I was almost just like a junkie. I'm just like, I need more. I need, whether it was podcasts, whether it was books, whether it was YouTube videos, whatever it may be, I could not get enough. So Rich Dad Poor Dad is awesome. And Start With Why, fantastic book. Absolutely love that book. I think I read that one a year or so back, and it's one of the it's a must read, I will say, for people.
It's a really good one. Anyone that's like getting into entrepreneurship,
Yes.
going on their own, it's a must read.
Yes, absolutely. All right. And the second question, what is one thing that you know now that you wish you knew when you were 20?
That it's okay to take big risk. Starting this company in close to my 40s was hard because you now have a family that you have to support. And luckily, I have my short-term rentals. Luckily, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I've saved up quite a bit over the last few years to be able to take this risk. I wish I took the non-linear path in my early days much sooner. I took risks. I've been at seven startups now. So I've taken plenty of risks there, but really just going out there, not having to get a job and just trying something on your own and just try something. That's when you really learn the most. I've grown as a person over the last year starting this company that I did with than compared to the 5 years prior.
Yeah. And it's one of those where when you're going to take those risks, I've experienced this. I'm sure you experienced it. People are going to come out of the woodworks and tell you why it won't work, why you shouldn't do it, to don't take that risk. Part of it's because they don't understand. Part of it's because maybe psychologically for some of those people, they would never have taken the risk themselves. So they assume that you shouldn't take that risk either. And I'm, myself taking a huge risk here, stepping away from my W-2 job to go into real estate full time. It's a world that I haven't known before because all I've known is a W-2 job plus short-term rentals. Now it's going to be very much focused on the short-term rental world. And I'm very much looking forward to that feeling that you're explaining of like, I wish I would have taken this jump sooner.
Yeah.
I had it planned the entire time, but it's one of those things where it becomes a lot more challenging when you have a family and you have
Yep.
kids. If it was just myself, I would have had no issue taking that risk 5-7 years ago, because at the end of the day, it's just me. But now if I take a risk and I'm not doing it in the right way or positioning, surrounding myself with people that can support me along the way, and I have 2 kids and a wife and basically a family to feed, then it becomes a lot more challenging and very much, so risky, but it's still possible. It's still doable. Just because you have a family, it's still possible to chase your dreams, start that business, buy your first property, whatever it may be.
Yeah. And you'll be surprised how much you'll learn in that first year being on your own.
Yes.
It's scary. It's definitely very, very scary, especially with myself with 2 young ones. They're like not knowing when things are going to take off or how things are going to be next month. It's scary. but the amount of growth that you go through, the things that you learn, the way that you really figure out how to navigate all that, it's invaluable.
Yeah, it really is. And I think everyone has that feeling when they do take that risk of, I wish I would have done this sooner. So I love that answer. That answer is perfect. So, well, Gil, I really appreciate you coming on the show. For our listeners today, how can they get in touch with you or Crafted Stays? What was the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, you can go on to our website, craftedstays.co. On the bottom of that, you can book a getting started tour. We can talk through what you have on your direct booking side, whether or not you have direct bookings or not. You're just getting started and you want someone to bounce ideas off of. We also have a lot of resources on our website as well too. We have tons and tons of blogs about how to drive more direct bookings. We have close to 45 podcast episodes on drive how to drive direct booking, so you can really consume all of that on our website, and it's all free. So yeah, I would definitely encourage folks to just get started as early as possible, because it does take a little bit of time for you to build that engine there. But the earlier you start, the closer that independence is going to become.
Perfect. Well, you heard him. Go to craftedstays.co, get in touch, and start chatting with Gil on how he can help you with your direct booking site. So, well, wonderful. Well, Gil, I appreciate the time. There you have it. Another episode of the Hideaway Show. He's Gil Chan. I'm Jordan Holmes. As always, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.